This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Abam, welcome, Rabbi Glatstein. Good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Kisavai. Well, on Wednesday we discussed the Tochecha and the number of words in the Tochecha and the significance of the fact that the Tochecha has 676 words and 26 mentions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. We are going to delve into that deeper and see yet another way to count the number of words in the Tochecha, and we will see Nifla'is Mitaraseno. We also contrasted the Tochecha in Bechukaisai to the Tochecha in this week's Parsha Kisavai. Well, the Gemara Megillah on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis tells us, Amar Abaye, Lo Yishanu Ela B'Klalai Shabataras Kayanim. We only learned regarding the curses of the Tochecha in Taras Kayanim. Meaning the Gemara is discussing that when somebody is reading the curses of the Tochecha of Bechukaisai, one is not allowed to be mafsik, one is not allowed to interrupt. However, says the Gemara, that's only the klalos of Vayikra, but the klalos of Mishnah Torah, you're allowed to interrupt. Paisek. My taima, what's the reason that you're allowed to be paisek? So the Gemara says, the reason is because halalu b'lashon rabim amurais Moshe mipi hagvuran atzman amran. V'halalu b'lashon yachid amurais Moshe mipi atzman amran. The Tochecha in Bechukaisai, Moshe Rabbeinu said mipi hagvura. Aside from the fact that it's b'lashon rabim, Moshe said it al pi mipi hagvura. And the Tochecha in Parshas Kisavai, Moshe says b'lashon yachid, and Moshe said it on his own. So this requires a lot of insight. What does it mean that the Tochecha in Bechukaisai Moshe Rabbeinu said mipi hagavura from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Tochecha in Kisavai Moshe said on his own? Chas v'shalom, Moshe Rabbeinu said anything on his own. We know the whole Torah is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu did not add or editorialize or offer his own interpretations or additions. So what does it mean? Moshe mipi atzman. So the Mefarshei HaZohar, including the Ramak, explains that the Rebbeinu Shalom's midah is midas hadin. And when Rebbeinu Shalom said the Tochecha in Bechukaisai, he said it b'midas hadin. Ma'ashen kein Moshe Rabbeinu, whose midah is tiferes, which is noite toward rachamim, it was said somewhat berachamim. So now the question is, in what way was the Tochecha in Kisava in Bechukaisai said bedin, and the Tochecha in Kisava said berachamim? So we learnt on Wednesday the tshuva of the Radvaz, and the Radvaz observes the fact that the Tochecha in Bechukaisai concludes with nechama, consolation. It concludes v'af gam zois be'eretz oiveim loy ma'astim v'loy ga'altim l'chaloisam l'hafer brisi itam. And the Tochecha in this week's Parsha does not conclude with any consolation whatsoever. Haloi davarhu. Why is it? Why doesn't the Tochecha begin with any consolation? Why doesn't it conclude with any consolation in this week's Parsha? And the Radvaz offers various answers. He suggests that maybe the word Yalem Hashem, Gam Kol Choyli B'Chol Maka, Yalem Hashem could mean God will hide it. But he asks, aside from the fact that Yalem does not mean to hide, but it means to bring upon, because the next words are Alecha, which means God will bring it upon you. But even after that pasuk, there's still many instances of klala that are mentioned in the parsha, and the Radvaz ultimately answers that there is a fundamental difference between the Tochecha Bechukaisai and the Tochecha of Kisavai, in that in the Tochecha of Bechukaisai we don't have the mention of Hashem's name, and therefore it requires great consolation. But the Tochecha in this week's Parsha is full of the name, mention of Hashem's name. Yitein Hashem, Yakecha Hashem, V'shilach Hashem. So since God's name appears in every pasuk and in every instance, so the realization, the recognition, the knowledge that it's coming from the Rebbeinu Shalom, knowing that it's coming from Hashem, it's not Hashem abandoning us to nature, but rather it's being visited only by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that alone is the greatest nechama. So we mentioned as well, how many times does God's name appear in the Tochecha? Hashem's name appears 26 times. Keneged, the 26 mentions of Hashem's name in the Shemona Esrei, aside from Birchas Haminim, besides from Vilam Malshinim. So Marv Rabbi, how many times is God's name mentioned in Shemona Esrei? Really 27. 26 besides Vilam Malshinim. And corresponding to that, we have the 26 mentions of Hashem's name in the Tochecha. We also brought down from the Sefer Yosef Tehillos and from Rabbi Meir Parmeshlan an amazing Gematria. Today on the sheet we have this from the great Darshan, the Lev Aryeh. And the Lev Aryeh says that the Medrash applies the following words to the Tochecha. Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik. Now if you're listening to this and you're saying, I heard this on Wednesday, you didn't hear nothing. Okay, I'm just giving you an introduction so that when we start, you're not lost. But this is the building blocks of today's shiur. In other words, I'm giving you what we did on Wednesday just to understand what we're going to advance and build upon that. The Medrash says that the Tochecha is a fulfillment of the pasuk Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik, Umikulam, Yatzilenu, Hashem. So the Lev Aryeh, the great Darshan, wants to know where in this pasuk is there a remez to the 98 curses of the Tochecha. Where do we see anything about Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik, Umikulam, Yatzilenu, Hashem from this pasuk? Well, says the Lev Aryeh, I found in the name of a Gadol Echad that how many words are in the Tochecha of Mishnah Torah? Taf, Reish, Ayin, Vav. 676. And corresponding to these 676 words, Moshe Rabbeinu said the name of Hashem 26 times. Because the name of Hashem is Gematria 26. And 26 times 26 is Ra'is, 676. Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik. Many evils before the Tzaddik. How many evils before the Tzaddik? 676. Umi kulam yatzilenu Hashem. And from all of them, the Rebbeinu Shalom saves us. Hashem saves us from all 676. How? The 26 mentions of Hashem's name in the Tochecha, 26 times 26, is 676. This is the reference. Kishem Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik. Many evils before the Tzaddik. Umikulam Yatzilenu Hashem. Now, Marv Rabbi says the Lev Aryeh, this is what it means. Kishem Hashem Ekra. When I call the name of Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu came to appease Klal Yisrael, that he was machmer on them with the klalos, and he says, don't worry, Kishem Hashem Ekra. I called out the name of Hashem, and if I called out the name of Hashem, that will protect you from the Tochecha. In fact, the great Megala Amukos, he says, Kishem Hashem Ekra begins with a kaf, and Havu Gadol Elokeinu ends in a vav, 26. That Hashem's name appears in the Tochecha 26 times. Gematria, Taf, Reish, Ayin, Vav, Rabbis, Ra'is, Tzaddik, Umikulam, Yatzilenu, Hashem. Marv Rabbi said, what do we say in Tachnun? We say in Tachnun, Rachim v'chanecha tasei lefanecha, Hashem alei rachmim, Rachim olai v'kabel tachanunai. Rachim olai v'kabel tachanunai is Rashi Tevois, Ra'is. So through the Shemona Esrei, we just said Hashem's name 26 times. Through that, we could be protected from Rachim Olai V'Kabel Tachanunai. Racham V'Chanun, merciful one, compassionate one. Protect us from the evils of this world. What are they? Rachim Olai V'Kabel Tachanunai. 676 Gematria Ra'is. This is what it means. Kishem Hashem Ekra. When I call out the name of God. So Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Through the power of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, Havu Goydel Leilokeinu, I'm able to bring Goydel, Gedula is midas hachesed. I'm able to bring the midas hachesed le'lokeinu to midas hadin. But Marv Rabbi say, we come to something amazing. How many words are in the klalois of this week's Parsha? So we said many times already. 676 words, communion rise, and the 26 names of Hashem times 26 is Gematria, 676. And Rav Shamshin Me'ashtrapoli and the Nachal Eshkol, he brings this Gematria as well. But now, this is Tavshin Pei Aleph, and we're going to see something, to build something on Tavshin Pei. Good point. Just joking. We're almost there. We're going to see a comment of the Roikeach that completely revolutionizes the computation of the number of words in the Tochecha, and that is the Roikeach says in number 8, Taf Shin Ayin Daled Teva B'Tochecha. There's 774 words in the Tochecha. Now I just want to point out, 774 is not the same number as 676, in case you were wondering. That's a different number. It's off by 98. Many Gersos of the Roikeach have 775. Then it's off by 99. By the way, in the 15 Sharamalos in Tehillim, we have 775 words. Communion, the words of the Tochecha. So this is very interesting. Somebody did not count correctly. Either the Lev Aryeh who counts 676, or the Roikeach who counts 775, but it doesn't seem like you could just say you're allowed to be one off, because you can't be 99 off. That they have not. That's not a rule in Gematria. You're allowed to be 99 off.
Isn't that the number of the klolos between Savo and Kokosa is 98 klolos?
Okay.
That's the difference between the 676 and the 774.
Yeah, but that just makes one of them wrong. The fact that there's significance to that number doesn't explain which count is correct and how they came to that count. So how do we explain this? Now, Marv Rabbi say, if you open up your Chumashim, and we try to make an accounting of exactly how many words there are in the Tochecha, in Parshas Kisavai, we're going to encounter something interesting, because the Tochecha begins, V'haya Kisavai al haaretz. It begins, V'haya im loy sishma b'kol Hashem aleikecha. And l'chayra, the Tochecha goes and goes and goes until we get to V'hashivcha Hashem Mitzrayim ba'aniyos v'ein koineh. L'chayra, that is where the Tochecha ends, but then there's another pasuk that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 words after that. Eila divrei habris asher tziva Hashem es Moshe l'chreis. So the question is, are we counting that pasuk? Are we not counting that pasuk? Even if we do or we don't, that will not account for the difference of 99 between the 775 and the 676. So in the Nitzutze Shimshon, he brings, many are matmiya, that in the Tochecha there are 676 words. So we answer as follows. That which the Kadmonim say that the Tochecha has 775 words, that's if you count the whole Parsha from V'haya im loy sishma until Eila divrei habris. But the Reb Shamshin Me'ashtapoli, who says 676, he doesn't count the last pasuk, Eila divrei habris, so that gets you 20 closer. You know how we know he doesn't count it? Because he says there are 26 mentions of Hashem's name in the Tochecha. And if you count this pasuk, there's a 27th. So the fact that he says that God's name only appears 26 times, that indicates that he doesn't count the last pasuk. So he doesn't count the last pasuk. That has... So really, what we're learning is how many times does God's name appear in the Tochecha in its full 27, which is mamish parallel to Shemona Esrei. There are 26 mentions of Hashem's name in Shemona Esrei, plus an added one in V'lam Oshinim. There are 26 mentions of Hashem's name in the Tochecha, plus an added one, Eila Divrei Habris. Now, we should only count those psukim. You could make the case you should only count the psukim that have verses of Peranios. Yesh limnois rakes hapsukim sheksuvim bahem rois pratios. We should only count the psukim that have specific evils, but not the pasuk v'haya imloi sishma, because that's just a general warning. And we shouldn't count the pasuk imloi sishmar lasais. And also tachas hashalai avada b'simcha, you should also not count. Also, maybe you shouldn't count the 26 mentions of Hashem's name. So if you take out the pasuk v'haya imloi sishmu, and the pasuk imloi sishmar, and the pasuk tachas hashalai avadata, and the pasuk eila divrei habris, and the 26 mentions of Hashem's name, you get 676. But if you count all of that, you get 775. So everyone is right. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. The Alev Aryeh and Ramshan Shashipoli is right, and the Roikeach is right. V'al pizeh nimtza hacheshbon mechuvan. According to this, the cheshbon comes out exact. Because in the pasuk v'haya imloi sishma, there are 23 words, and tachas hashalei avadata, 12 words. Imloi sishmar, 21 words. Eila divrei habris, 20 words. A total of 26 words. Then 23 other names of Hashem in the Tochecha, aside from the ones in the psukim we already took out. A total of 99 words. So it's 676 without the general psukim, without the names of Hashem. And it's 775 if you count everything. Bottom line is, how many words in the Tochecha are there? There's a one-word answer. It depends. If you're going to be a big stickler and count only what meets the bar, 676. If you're going to have a lower standard and you're going to count everything, 775. So we were entitled to give a shiur on Wednesday of the significance of 676. And Baruch Hashem, I need to say something, so I'm also entitled to give a shiur on the significance of 775. That's the beauty of the Torah. Uchepatish yifutzat sela. Every dimension of looking at the Torah, there is great depth of meaning. So what we're going to discuss today, so Friday night at the Shabbos table, you could say over the shiur of 676, and then Shabbos morning at the Shabbos table, you'll say 775, and then you'll become such a well-known darshan that you'll have hundreds of people at your table for Shalosh Shudas, and I would suggest you start preparing now what you're going to be saying for Shalosh Shudas. Okay. But I can only help you with two.
You have to say a shiur about 770.
Okay. We're going to keep with 775. Okay? So, let's talk a little bit about L'David Hashem Oyer V'Yishi. We know Minhag B'chol Tfutzos Yisrael, actually B'roiv Tfutzos Yisrael, in Sans, I believe they do not say L'David Hashem Oyer V'Yishi. However, almost everybody says L'David Hashem, and in the Siddur of the Arizal, it's brought to say L'David Hashem morning and evening, every single day. And if you do, you are vouchsafed that you will make it through the year, and it will be a good year. And even if there's a Gzeira Ra, Hashem will be mavatal it and remove all the makatrugim and all the offensive and instigating angels, and be mavato gzeros kashais, and you will come out innocent on the Yom Adin. And one of the significances of L'David Hashem Oyer V'Yishi is, we know during the Chodesh of Elul, the gateways of the Yud Gimel Midos Harachimim are open. And in L'David Hashem, how many times does God's name appear? God's name appears 13 times, Rabbi Isai, corresponding to the Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim that are prevalent during this time of the year. But Marv Rabbi Isai, if you say L'David in the morning and you say L'David in the evening, you have a total of 26 times God's name appears. So again, 26 times 26 is 676. So now we know why you're going to have a good year. L'David has the capacity to protect you from the klalos of the Tochecha. It's the Gematria Ra'is. But Marav Rabbi we learned that there's another count of the Tochecha. And that's the count of the Roikeach. And according to that expanded count, there's 775 words in the Tochecha. And according to the expanded count of the Roikeach, how many times does God's name appear? Not 26, but 27. And if 26 times 26 is Gematria 676, what's 26 times 27? 702. What's 702? Shabbos. Shabbos is 702. It's also 702. No, I'm not sure. Maybe something like that. Early Shabbos, 702. Anyway, Shabbos is Gematria 702. In fact, the Arizal writes in the Pri Eitz Chaim, Shabbos is 27 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. In fact, the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Yisro says, the reason why it's called Shabbos, why is it called Shabbos? It's the name of God from every angle. If you take every angle of the name of God, you get Shabbos. The Bnei Yissaschar explains that how many letters of the Aleph Beis are there? There are 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, plus Menatzbach, the end of Mem, the end of Nun, the end of Tzadi, the end of Pei, the end of Chaf. So there are 27 letters of the alphabet, of the Jewish alphabet. Each letter of the Aleph Beis is infused with another Kedusha of a different Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the entirety of the Aleph Beis, each letter's Kedusha from each Yud Kei Vav Kei is 27 letters of the Aleph Beis, each one from a different Yud Kei Vav Kei, 702. That's Shabbos. Shabbos encompasses all dimensions of the Shem Havaya, the Aleph dimension, the Beis dimension, the Gimel, the Dalet, the Hey, the Vav, the Zayin, and so on and so forth. That's why it's called Shabbos, because Shabbos, that the Zohar says all blessing is incorporated in Shabbos, because Shabbos is every dimension of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. As the Zohar says in Parshas Yisro, Kol Bercha, number 17, Dila'ela V'tata, every blessing from above and below, B'yoyma Shvi'ah Talyan, is dependent on the seventh day. All blessing is dependent on the Shabbos, because the Shabbos incorporates all blessing. That is why the Bnei Yissaschar says that certain medaktikim, certain people who are very meticulous and careful and have great reverence for the Torah, they're careful not to say the word Shabbos in vain. Why? Because Shabbos is the name of Hashem. In fact, Shabbos encapsulates all 27 Yud Kei Vav Keis. So it comes out, Marav Rabbi, perhaps, we know that Shabbos is a source of all blessing. And we know that through Shabbos, the Rebbeinu Shalom removes all the Mekatrigim and all the Mastinim. I once saw in the Sefer Torah Or, every Friday night we pick up the kais, right? We take the kais of Yayin. I'm just picking this up because this is the most valuable item I happen to have on my desk right now. And it says, we say, Vayera Vereka, Yoim, Hashishi, Vayechulu Hashamayim, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why Yud Kei Vav Kei? Because on Shabbos it's Midas Harachamim. However, before Shabbos we say 32 times Elokim, Midas Hadin. Elokim appears 32 times in the first Parsha of Bereshis. And then we say Vayer, Vayivoker, Yoim Hashishi, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Vayichlu Hashamayim va'aretz chosam vayichal Elokim. Elokim is done. Elokim, Midas Hadin is finished. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh says that a person's success and blessing and the ability to remove tzara is dependent on the Shabbos. The pasuk says as follows: Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem. For God created 6 days. It doesn't say, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, B'sheishes yamim, God created in 6 days. But rather, Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem. God created 6 days. Meaning, the way God creates the 6 days of the week is through Shabbos. If you have a good Shabbos, meaning, if Shabbos is spent proper, that means a person is ready to milkabel the Shabbos. Instead of the Shabbos schlepping you into shul, you're there waiting for the Shabbos to come. And a person is careful about malacha. and a person conducts his Shabbos table b'kedusha. He says divrei Torah. He sings zemiros. He refrains from improper conversation. A person davens properly. A person spends Shabbos in rest and, of course, in limud Torah. So now with that Shabbos, God will create the next 6 days of bracha v'hatzlacha. God creates the 6 working days through the sanctity of Shabbos. Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem. God created the 6 days through Shabbos. Shabbos, all difficulty that transpires during the week, you could correct with Shabbos. Because Shabbos recreates the working week. God uses the Shabbos to create, to be mahaveh. Because think about it. How many words in the Tochecha? 676. Rois. But if you add Yud Kei Vav Kei, you get Shabbos. You get the Gematria of Shabbos. Through Shabbos, you could be mavatel the Rois of the Tochecha. Now, I was speaking to my good friend, Rabbi Meir Bronstein, Shlita, the Rav of the Aguda of Harakaway, and he told me from his Zayda, the Meir Einei Yesharim. But this morning I saw the same idea in the Igra Dekala. We know the Tochecha comes, Tachas asher lo yavadatas Hashem lekecha b'simcha u'v'tuv levav me'roiv kol. Because you did not worship Hashem in happiness and good-heartedly with abundance. Comes the Igra Dekala, and the Igra Dekala says, it should say asher lo yavadata. Al asher lo yavadata. Because, what's Tachas? Tachas means under. Watch this trick. Tachas asher. Look under the words asher. Under an aleph is a beis. Under a shin is a taf. Under a resh is a shin. Shabbos. Tachas asher. Under the word asher is Shabbos. Lo yavadatas Hashem lekecha b'simcha. You know why you didn't serve God on Shabbos? Shabbos is the key. The reason for the Tochecha is you did not observe the Shabbos properly. If you would have observed the Shabbos, Shabbos is 702, corresponding to the 27 names of God and the expanded version of the Tochecha. If you observe the Shabbos properly, then the 702 of Shabbos will take care of the 27 Shemos of Hashem in the Tochecha. Marv Rabbi say, how many hours in Shabbos? So you say it depends where you daven.
Could be 26.
It ranges anywhere between exactly 24 hours and a little bit and longer. We know there's a concept of Tosefah Shabbos, which means a minimum of a Zman Muat before Shabbos, you should accept the Shabbos. Now I'll tell you something, and ask your local Orthodox rabbi, how do you fulfill this? But many shuls, they daven mincha erev Shabbos very close to Shkia. Now, that itself is something to think about. Because in the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, you need to finish Shemona Esrei before Shkia. Right? The Mishnah Berurah says that if you're not going to finish Shemona Esrei before Shkia, you should daven b'yechidos. That's the opinion of Mishnah Berurah. Many disagree. The Aruch HaShulchan disagrees, and the Aruch HaShulchan says you just have to start before Shkia. And I think most shuls are relying on the Aruch HaShulchan. But if you rely on the Aruch HaShulchan, you got yourself into a little bit of a problem on Erev Shabbos. Because you can't daven mincha Erev Shabbos on Shabbos. Now, if by the time you're up to V'lam Oshinim in mincha Shemona Esrei, it's already Shkia, then you can't be Makabel Shabbos yet, because you're in the middle of mincha. Okay, I won't be Makabel Shabbos. Yeah, but then you never had Tosefah Shabbos. So you want to try to find a place that you're going to be able to finish your quiet Shemona Esrei before the Shkia. Lots of luck finding that place. Many shuls do. So for example, by us, I made Mincha Erev Shabbos, instead of 10 minutes after candlelighting, 8 minutes after candlelighting. So you say, what's the difference? The difference is whether you get Tosefah Shabbos or you don't. Because what you could do is, once you finish the silent Shemona Esrei, you say as follows, Hareini Mekabel Kedushas Shabbos. Now you could still answer Chazaras Hashatz, but speak to your local posek, how to reconcile the Mincha of Shabbos with Tosefes Shabbos. Okay, that's just for thought. I'm not telling you what to do, but how many hours is Shabbos? The Magen Avram says that Zakenim and Anshe Maisa would stop doing Malacha 2 hours before Shabbos. Well, if that's the case, Tosefes Shabbos is 2 hours. And how about after Shabbos? 1 hour. Again, I'm not telling you to do that, especially because I don't think I ever did that. But that's what the Magen Avram brings. That Zakenim v'Anshe Maisa. Again, this is not a required. This is not brought in the Shulchan Aruch. And it's not, the Noisei Kelim don't say you have to do it. We're just learning conceptually that there is a concept of refraining from Malacha 2 hours before and 1 hour after. That would give you a total of how many hours? 27 hours. So you say that's very strict. Just be happy I didn't tell you the Arizal who says it's 31 hours, okay? So just be happy with that. I guess I just did. The Arizal in the Pri Eitz Chaim, he says there are 31 kings in Canaan, where the 31 klipos that Yeshua conquered, and corresponding to that are 31 hours of Shabbos. So, if your rabbi goes over in his Shalashudas by 2 minutes, refrain from causing him bodily injury, because really, the Shabbos could be 2 hours before and 1 hour after. Okay, now, if we go to number 23, and the Sidurei Shel Shabbos, the great work on Shabbos, Sidurei Shel Shabbos, he says, where does the word Shabbos come from? Like, who made up that word? Who came up with that phrase? Shabbos. What a nice expression. Where does that come from? Because we know that Shabbos is 24 hours plus 2 hours before and 1 hour after. So Shabbos is a total of 27 hours. 27 times 26 is 702. Shabbos. Says the Shvilei Pinchas, who, by the way, this shiur came from the Sefer Shvilei Pinchas. And let me tell you what year it was. Tavshin Ayin, this is, 10 years ago. So the Shvilei Pinchas says, we're going to be saying Hoshana soon. Not Mamish tomorrow, don't worry, don't get scared, but it's coming up. One of the Hoshanas, he says, Hoshana, Shalosh, Shalois, Hoshana. Please save me, 3 hours, save me. What are these 3 hours that we're asking God to save me? So some people say, they got stuck in a shiur and it wasn't ending. It was going on forever and ever. It was hitting about 3 hours. So they said, save me 3 hours. Say, no, just joking. Hoshana Shalosh, says the Shvilei Pinchas, refers to the 3 hours of Tosefes Shabbos, 2 before and 1 after, that we say, Hashem, save us in the zechus of the 3 hours. But by the way, Rabbi Isai, maybe we could say that we know that even 1 moment of an hour could be considered an hour. So even if you add 2 minutes before and 1 minute after, that's also, by the way, for sure, a halachic kiyum of Tosefes Shabbos. Marv Rabbi Isai, it's very interesting. We know that Shabbos is really the hamtza of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who invented the Shabbos. That's what we say in the davening. The Torah says, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chalkai. Paroi wanted to take away the Jewish people's work day. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you take away their work day, Paroi wanted to take away the day of rest of Klal Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, look, if you don't give your workers a day of rest, they're going to become worn out, they're going to be exhausted, and they will not be able to produce. You need to give them a break. So Paroi said, what day do you think I should give them off? So Moshe said, give them off Saturday. So Moshe Rabbeinu created the Shabbos, and then when Hashem gave the Shabbos to Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Baruch Shekivanti. So really, the Arizal says, in Parshas Kisisa, Shabbos has 2 elements to it. Moshe Rabbeinu invented the Shabbos as a day off. And that's certainly one dimension of the Shabbos. It's a day off. The working week is tired. People have to get up early. People have to go to work. People have shiurim, responsibilities, family responsibilities. It's very tiring, and we could all use a well-deserved rest on Shabbos. But that's, so to speak, Moshe Rabbeinu's idea of Shabbos. We were working hard in Mitzrayim. We needed a day off. But God's idea of Shabbos is not just so that we should rest. It's so that we have the availability to Shavas, Lashuv, to Acha Sha'alti Ves Hashem, Oisavake Shivti, to sit, contemplate, think, meditate. What is our responsibility in this world? What do we need to focus on? So there's Moshe's Shabbos and there's God's Shabbos. So that's the meaning of the pasuk. V'yata, look at number 25. Daber el b'nei Yisrael. Leimar, ach es Shabbos soisai tishmayru. We know ach is a miut. Hashem tells Moshe, until now they were keeping your Shabbos, just as a day off. Henceforth, I want them to keep my Shabbos. My Shabbos is a completely different idea. Let's look at number 26 in Likutei Torah. V'zeu soid es Shabbos soisai tishmayru beis Shabbos shehem Hashem's and Moshe. One is Shvisa Mimalacha, that with this, a person wants the tzivoy, and he is noyach and shoyves from the yagia, to guard it from, in all the details. So there's the Shvisa of Moshe, and number two, to be careful not to violate Malacha. We know from Yismach Moshe that Moshe asked Paro in Mitzrayim that he should allow Klal Yisrael a day off and work for 6 days, and Paro consented so that they'd be able to work more in the 6 days. So Hashem says, Ach, Eshabsoisai, Tishmoiru. From now on, I don't want them being Mekayim Shabbos, your concept of Shabbos. I want them being Mekayim, my concept of Shabbos. Ladas ki ani Hashem Mekadeschem. I want them to observe the Shabbos as a day of sanctifying themselves, imbuing holiness in their life, not just as from rest from avoida. But for Rabbi Sai, we all know that in all Jewish communities, the Shabbos is greeted with Kabbalah Shabbos. And in Kabbalah Shabbos, we say Mizbar Nun Tzadi Hey, Tzadi Vav, Tzadi Zayin, Tzadi Ches, Tzadi Tes. Then we say Mizmar LeDavid. Then we say Mizmar Shiliyam HaShabbos. Then we say Hashem Malach Geos Lavesh. Where did these Mizmarim come from? Who decided on these particular Mizmarim, these 5 Mizmarim? Where did this come from? Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, if you add up the words of the 7 Mizmarim that we say Friday night, it's Gematria 702. Shabbos. That's Mamish Lo Yu'uman Ki Yisupar. By the way, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld had the most amazing Gematrias. We know that he was the leader of the Perushim in Eretz Yisrael, and he was not in favor of nationality, of the state of Israel as a nationality. He felt that there could be no nationality without observance, and he would say as follows. He says, we all say, Mesameach Tzion Bevaneha, Zion will rejoice in her children, but the Gematria of Mesameach Tzion Bevaneha is 613. Tzion only rejoices in her children when it's accompanied by the observance. He would also say as follows. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld would say, Tzion b'mishpat tipadet. Tzion will be redeemed with mishpat, Gematria, Talmud Yushalmi. Vishaveha b'tzedaka, Gematria, Talmud Bavli. He would also say as follows. You know, the Rosh Hashanah laning ends, V'yes tarash, v'yes ma'acha. You know, that's a very poignant way to end the Rosh Hashanah laning. Like, what's Macha got to do with the price of tea in China? Macha is Rosh Tevos. Melech al kol ha'aretz. That's how we end the laning on Rosh Hashanah. Ma'acha. Melech al kol ha'aretz. He'd also say as follows. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld would daven Nusach Ashkenaz. However, he would always be pleased if he had the opportunity to daven Musaf on Shabbos in a Nusach Sfard shul. And he would say, because he would love to say Keser. Why Keser? He would say like this. We know that davening on Rosh Hashanah, on Shemona Esrei has 19 brachos, 3 times a day. That's 57. But we have Chazoros Hashatz twice a day. That's another 38. What's 57 and 38? 95. 6 days a week. What's 95 times 6? 570. Then you would have the Friday night is 7. Shabbos morning 14, 21. Musaf 14, 35. And then Mincha 14, 49. What's 570 and 49? 619. So during the course of the week, we say a total of 619 brachos. And what's the one bracha that ties it all together and makes the crown for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Keser! Keser is Gematria 620. Keser, the word Keser takes all the tefillos and all the brachas of the entire week and weaves it together and creates Viata, Kadosh, Yoshev, Tehillos, Yisrael, weaves a beautiful crown for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld always appreciated being able to say Keser, and he discovered this great Einfall, that how many words are in the Kabbalah Shabbos? 702 words. Mavra Aboisai, how do we overcome the Tochecha? We're learning that even though in the abridged version there are 26 names of Hashem, in the shortened version there are 27 names of Hashem. And we overcome the Tochecha through Shabbos, which is Gematria, 27 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. As we know, all tsaros are nizbatel through Shmira. Shabbos, God creates the 6 days with the Shabbos. Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem. God uses Shabbos to create the days of the week. So Marva Rabbeisai, through Shmira Shabbos, the Rebbeinu Shalom has the capacity, and we have the capacity to shield, guard, protect, watch, and ward away the klalos of the Tochecha, because as the Zayar says in Parshas Yisroi, he says, Kol birchan de la'ela v'sata b'yayma shivia talyan. All blessing is dependent on Shabbos. Shabbos is called Shabbos. Siddur Shel Shabbos says it's 26 times 27. Shabbos has 27 hours. And Shabbos is Gematria 27 times Yud Kei Vav Kei, and that is our source of blessing. That is why the Panim Yafai says we use Lechem Mishnah Friday night, Lechem Mishnah Shabbos day, Lechem Mishnah Shalashudas. 6 loaves all together to bring blessing to all 6 working days. The Shabbos is the source of all blessing and the source of all protection. And of course this year, where Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, so we have an extra dose of protection. We have the Shabbos on the Yom Hadin to guard over us. So we should be Zoicha, the Rebbeinu Shalom should be Megan over us, and we should apply the principle, Tichle Shana V'Kilaloiseha. May the year come to an end with all of its klala, and the new year should begin only with bracha v'hatzlacha, lanu u'lechol Yisrael. Amen.
Good Shabbos.
Baruch Tiyah. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.